Oh boy. So there's this group called Collective Shout, and I've only recently heard about them on articles. People are starting to talk about it. And one of their tweets that they put out, which is July 18th, it was July 20th at the time I made this. And it says, and I can't say all of the stuff that's on there so you can read it for yourselves, but it says, since we launched our campaign calling on payment processors to stop facilitating payments for RAP, Sweet Home Alabama, Spicy Torture, and Child ABUSE themed games on Steam, they have added a new rule to their policies, plus removed 100 of these games. Now, they have some examples down here, apparently. I don't know what these are, but sure, why not? These are, they're adult category. And there are quite a few of them on Steam. I've never heard of any of these, and it's probably because these people took them down. But I think it's safe to say that these titles are not depictions of actual people. And as long as you're not perpetuating like children or something, then I guess they should have fun with that, because they literally do the same thing on the hub, except those are real people and we have no way of knowing for sure whether or not those people are related. Then these people came out and said, predictably, misogynist gamers have come out in defense of their RAP games, sending us abuse threats, prawn and CSAM? What does that mean? Using and distributing photos of our faces, encouraging us to just jump off the face of the proverbial flat landscape. The irony isn't lost on us. Interesting. Now, I'm not saying that it's right to send threats or encouraging people to harm themselves. That's not acceptable. I don't think that is a productive way to get across what you want. But when groups like this one step into what a lot of people see to be deeply personal and emotionally charged territory, especially when it comes to censorship with everything that's going on and creative expression, you're gonna get blowback. And I'm sure these people know this, they were ready for it, but like what every other person does nowadays who holds a lot of influence and power in these organizations or these studios or what have you, they're ready to turn around and blame everybody else and say that these people are victimizing them. Apparently, the same group was trying to take down Detroit Becoming Human as well, just because they depict violence against women and possibly children as well. Now, there's nothing wrong with you boycotting something and saying you don't want to buy it, but trying to censor it is crazy. Now, there are quite a few articles that were talking about this. It says that more than 400 games depicting these things, the topics, the spicy topics, have been pulled off of a gaming platform after action from Australian nonprofit. And after that nonprofit called on payment processors to cut ties. Collective Shout, an Australian nonprofit that fights the sexualization of women and girls, interesting, shared an open letter on Monday calling on payment processors to cease ties with gaming platforms such as Steam, which is owned by an American company, which is the irony of all of this. MasterCard, PayPal, Visa, PaySafe Limited, and Discover were some of the payment processors named in the open letter. These games endorsing men's objectification and torture of females fly in the face of efforts to address violence against women. We don't see how facilitating payment transactions and deriving financial benefit from these violent and unethical games is consistent with your corporate values and mission statements. We request that you demonstrate corporate social responsibility and immediately cease processing payments in Steam and any other platforms hosting similar games. Melinda Tankard-Rice, the movement creator of Collective Shout, told news.com.au. The push came after she appeared on a television show in the UK to discuss the game No Mercy, a game where players assume the persona of a man who assaulted women as punishment for his mother's infidelity. That Collective Shout had gotten pulled off Steam in April. The reporter mentioned she'd come across other related games, so we did a deeper search and discovered almost 500. Miss Tankard-Rice says. You can read the rest here if you'd like. I know that there's games out there in Steam that do this, have spicy content. I don't know of any that have like straight up RP and torturing or anything like that. I'm sure if you dig deep enough, you can find them. But then where does that begin and end? Because blatantly going around and doing that, sure, even though these aren't real things that are happening, there are games out there too that women play where you can collect men and like breed them and stuff. But anyway, these are not actual people that this is happening to. So I guess that's why they're initially able to get away with it. And depending on the story around it, I think that these themes can be done tastefully. But here's the bigger, I guess, discussion. And keep in mind that these same people tried to get Detroit Becoming Human taken off of Steam as well. That's just an example. That's not as outlandish a game as they're trying to make it seem. But groups like Collective Shout, NCOSE, and others seem to kind of like make themselves seem as though they're these moral crusaders protecting society from harm. But the thing is that their actions end up creating way more damage than the alleged problems that they're fighting. Their campaigns against adult video games or spicy content, specifically those with the taboo or controversial or fantasy fictional themes, because they all are fictional, and they don't just reflect these pure values, they're actively endangering artistic freedom. And they're also misrepresenting reality and making themselves the end be all of public morality and ruling the public and what they should consume and what they shouldn't consume. The biggest issue is that they're promoting censorship, and they're trying to make it seem as though they're doing a great good. They're masquerading as, they're just trying to protect these groups. But you're not simply critiquing the content, though. You're just lobbying for removal and banning and all these things, but you're not actively saying, hey, this could be a bigger topic. This could be a bigger conversation. This is what this game is showcasing. This is why this could be harmful or whatever. And that's just censorship. You don't like it. And so you're like, well, this game has this without any nuance whatsoever, and just taking off anything that happens to fall under that, including the game. You can see the footage here of Detroit Becoming Human. And most people who played this game, they're like, okay, what are you talking about? Yes, you're going to have those depictions, but it's part of the freaking story. Now, when they write letters to payment processors like PayPal and MasterCard, etc., and ask them to essentially, hey, stop paying these people, stop access to platforms like Steam, you're essentially weaponizing financial institutions for your own moral purity, which is really not pure at all. And this bypasses this democratic process and directly targets artists and small developers and consenting adults. That's something we have to also remember. Like, a lot of these people that they have to go in and make payments, they're usually adults. You need to be an adult in order to have a credit card and a payment, something that you can use to pay things online. So when you're doing that, you're consenting to whatever it is that you're looking at. This also covers movies, by the way, and shows. So I'm going to get into that, and I'm sorry if I'm like all over the place. My brain is kind of like fried. It's setting up a very slippery slope, because once you start dictating like what kind of fantasy is allowed, it becomes dangerously easy to expand that scope into other creative works like books, music, and art, and scientific research. And history has shown us how these authoritarian regimes often start with the whole, we're just protecting the public and the children, and then it ends up with silencing anybody who goes against them entirely. That's how it always starts. They create this moral panic. Oh, Pokemon are bad, or Mortal Kombat is bad. This is evil. This is satanic, with all these misleading claims with no nuance whatsoever. Oh my god, this freaking yellow Pokemon out here is psychic and he has a hexagon or a pentagon on him. Must mean that he's satanic. See, they're saying their names, they're calling up demons. I have heard almost everything. And claiming that games like Honey Pop or like other examples harm children is basically like this classic pearl clutching thing that has happened throughout the many years with very little evidence. And most of these games also, they people don't consider that they're clearly labeled as mature or adult content. You need to put your age or have a payment in order to play these games. So they're hidden behind age restrictions, and they're meant for consenting adults, not kids. But it doesn't even matter, because they're also targeting adults. They're basically saying, adults are not allowed to play this either. What I find incredibly disconcerting is that these groups are so disgusting because they exploit worst case scenarios and then conflate them with real life situations. They're conflating fantasy with real life things that happen, and makes it seem as though the video games or fictional content is going to end up creating real-world harm, despite decades of research saying otherwise. And a lot of these studies actually show no casual link between consuming sexual or violent fiction with committing real-life crimes. As a matter of fact, if that were the case, I would have been out there in jail already. And if we follow their logic, we'd have to ban everything. Game of Thrones, Shakespeare, which both of which include the topics of incest and RP and taboo themes. And I mean, think about all of the works of fiction that we'd have to scour through. We'd have almost nothing left. These people are like, oh, this is why we exist. To build a world where people can live love without sexual exploitation and whatever else. But that's not really what they need. I mean, they're trying to ban spicy content as a whole because these people are so up in their freaking neck holes that anything tied to humanity that happens to do with spiciness or sensuality, which is ingrained in human nature, that is seen as bad to them. And the other thing that they fail to understand or they willfully ignore is the nature of fiction or fantasy. People as a whole, many of us, consume dark, erotic, or violent fiction not because we want to emulate it, but because fiction is a safe container that we can use to explore taboo emotions or trauma or fantasy. The same way horror fans enjoy slasher films, which these people probably want to ban as well. Trust me, they're coming for that next. Or like true crime junkies obsess over serial killers, some adults enjoy erotic games with strange or controversial themes. It doesn't make them broken, it makes them human. Pretending that people can't differentiate between fictional fantasy and real-world ethics is really insulting, and you're treating the public probably how you process things, like a child. If someone enjoys some bizarre hentai game, it doesn't mean that the person is dangerous or they're gonna go out there and do that to other people. It means they like weird, pixelated, spicy content, or they're just curious about it. I myself have done the same thing. There's one called the jousting thing with the phalluses, and they played that. These people would ban something like that and be like, that's not allowed. If I want to dress my anime girl in revealing clothing, oh, objectification, I guess I'm a misogynist, can't do that. And this is weird. This is really weird. It really feels like if you go back through the history of things like this that happened in the past, the same thing they try to do with Pokemon, but then these same people also try to target Mario as well. They will say everything under the earth is bad just so they can control the masses. Because if you convince people something is wrong with them and you make them the enemy of themselves, then you can convince them that they need you to feel righteous. That's all it is. It's a freaking cult. As a matter of fact, the NCOSE, they evolved from this group called Morality in Media that apparently, based on what I've seen, used to be a Christian conservative group, or probably still is. So already you know that a lot of this isn't what you're thinking it is. Some of this is based on their own religious purity or pretending to be pure thing, which is funny because you know, growing up Christian, how many people, how many priests, how many people in the pews of church were watching stuff that they weren't supposed to be watching in church, who were cheating on their wives and committing all these heinous things because they're so freaking repressed. So the more you try to control them by saying that they're not allowed to do certain things, is the more you actually have these things happen in these spaces, because there's nothing that makes a human being want to do something more by telling them that they cannot do it and are not allowed to do it. Now they're trying to pretend that they're feminist or anti-trafficking rhetoric. Like, they're trying to do all of that to make it seem more modern. Like, oh, we're not, it's not the Christian thing, we're anti-traffickers. Like, come on, feminists, come with us. And it's so funny because the same feminists who were like anti-religion are now pairing up with these people, not even realizing what the hell it is that they're giving into. And it is a very slippery slope when you're appeasing these people, because they can't be appeased. Once you start to let these moral watchdogs decide on what's too offensive or too taboo, or you can't have this and you can't have that, here are the things that end up happening next, right? First, it will be honey pop. Then it will be cyberpunk. Then it's going to be indie visual novels and romance games. Girls, listen to this very carefully, because we're the biggest consumers of those types of genres. Then it's going to be erotic books, like 50 Shades of Grey or whatever else. You know, what's the other one that I read recently? Lemonade. Yes, by Penelope Douglas, or one of them. But this Italian author, I read this one called Lemonade. You won't be able to get stuff like that. Then creators will start self-censoring even safer work content, to avoid being labeled problematic, and then suddenly payment processors start freezing accounts, or anyone selling quote-unquote adult material, which has already happened to spicy workers and kink authors and not safe for work artists. We've seen this with OnlyFans and with Patreon, and even with YouTube. Adult creators get demonized or purged in sweeps based on vague community standards. It's often influenced by the pressure from these very groups or groups like them. And I'm going to make an argument as to why certain games should exist. Now, within reason, of course. If you're exploiting real people, then yeah, there's a way to do things, but these games should be allowed to exist because they protect artistic freedom. Even if a game is weird or gross, like Grand Theft Auto, for example, because that's the closest example I can think of that people are like, oh, it's kind of... That's taboo. You can go around and just mass murdering people. Like it's fantasy though. You realize you're not actually doing this to actual people out there, and that some people might think it's gross and immoral. It's not your thing. Sure, freedom of expression applies to everyone. These are also fictional works. It's not like you're putting an actual like someone's house, right? Because I can understand if you decide to your ex-girlfriend's house and you're like, you know what? I'm going to make a map of this neighborhood that's my ex-girlfriend's neighborhood, and I'm going to have people go to her house and, like, off the family that looks just like her. Yeah, that's problematic. I can see that. But if it's a completely fictional world, shouldn't be a problem. They provide outlets for safe exploration. Fantasies where people can experiment without hurting anyone. They support niche creators or indie adult developers that they make a living off of creating these weird, beautiful, or sex-positive work for tiny audiences. They allow conversations about ethics and culture and taste, and people will talk about these types of games or play them and say, wow, that was crazy. I had to live through being a slave or something of this person in a harem. I've never imagined what that would be like, or what would it be like if I actually was a leader of one of these things. Erasing something controversial doesn't help us understand it, and you make people want to do more of that thing. The danger really comes down to the people who think that you shouldn't be allowed to decide what media you consume. And maybe some of you are wondering, well, what about you, Alteori? Like, why do you have a dog in this fight? I actually do have a dog in this fight, because, and other people who are watching this, whether you're a developer, whether you're an author, music, whatever art that you do, like even the NS not safe for work artists, I know quite a few of you who do this kind of stuff. You're the target as well, and this is how this witch hunt targets you and creators like you and me. As for me, it feels like it could affect me directly, not just as a writer, but as someone who actually went through the kind of exploitation that these groups claim they're fighting against. I write books with sci-fi and horror and romance, but they're very dark, right? They're not these neat little tie of the bow wholesome things. There are wholesome themes in there, but they go really deep sometimes. Some of my shit is just raw and just like fucked up. And that's why a lot of people like my stories, because they're like, wow, I never would have even thought to explore this specific theme. And wow, I kind of understand in this specific situation why, even though this is taboo, it would be understandable why this would happen. Like the harem story that I'm working on. And my characters deal with trauma. There are graphic moments, and there's psychological tension, there's abuse, there's a bunch of other things, and some of it is people just liking toxic things. Things that people would say is very toxic. It falls under dark romance. That's what I usually do, like dark romance or sci-fi with romantic themes. So I can kind of take each of the genres and blend them together so it's a little bit of something for everyone. And yeah, I make a lot of it uncomfortable on purpose because that's what makes it feel real. That's what makes it relatable. And we had some of these same pearl clutchers that were going over to like my fan fiction with Godzilla and stuff like that, where they're actual, this is how silly it is. They're kaiju, imaginary kaiju, anthropomorphized kaiju that are not real. And people were clutching their pearls because there was a scene with Mothra and Rodan almost doing something, and I voice acted it, and it made them uncomfortable, and all of a sudden their whole moral thing was, oh my god, the children! And I'm just like, bro, are you okay? First of all, you know it's adult content. What are you doing here? Second of all, it is fake. They are kaiju. Like, please understand, like, these people, these are the people, this kind of thinking, this level of low IQ, these are the kind of people that want to be the moral compass for the rest of society. Just sit with that for a second. And the rest of everybody else is fine. And then you have people thinking things like Game of Thrones shouldn't exist. Now, we're not even going to talk about the last season of Game of Thrones, because I can understand why people would say that after watching that. But we're talking about just simple things like that. They would look at things like Kaiju number 8 or Chainsaw Man and say those things shouldn't exist because they'll find something that is morally impure about these things. How dare? How dare we sit down and enjoy something that otherwise we wouldn't want to take part in the real world? And now I'm watching people like Collective Shout try and wipe out everything that doesn't fit their neat little view of what's safe, as if art should be shrink-wrapped to a G-rated score for their approval only, not the rest of the world. And the scariest part, like I was saying, is that my books, and so many other like them, that could be next. If this continues, people like me will have no stories left to tell. It's not just about me, though. There are thousands and millions of other creators out there, women especially, who explore dark and erotic or traumatic themes through fiction. That includes books, games, visual novels, films, TV shows. Like, if we start to go down this road of censorship, that entire space disappears. Completely sanitized, silenced, it doesn't matter what. And these people will be like, finally, I was able to just burn the world to the ground. What's next? What can I burn next? It will never stop there. And what pisses me off the most, this is what pisses me off the most, is how they try to speak for victims when they don't speak for me. I am a survivor of that. I lived through that. I know what it's like. I've lived through it over and over again. And reading books or playing games with intense or graphics or whatever, things that were or even taboo, didn't harm me. I was able to play them. Some of them even helped me cope. It gave me a place to explore what happened to me without judgment. It gave me power over it. Sometimes it didn't. Sometimes I just want to play a freaking game and have a story be told from the eyes of someone whose shoes I've never walked in. And I was able to enjoy that. Grand Theft Auto, I want to know what it's like to be a criminal and do all these things and pull someone out of their car, or just like, oh, that person's behind me, let me get out and pop them. Never once did I ever think about doing that in real life, because I'm a healthy, I believe, mostly a healthy person who can differentiate fantasy from reality. And now these people have a nerve to say that those same games or books are just as bad as the real thing. It's essentially what you're saying, that they encourage abuse. That's a slap in the face of people that have gone through this actually. It's not the same thing. I promise you, it is not the same thing. And you're projecting your own fears and religious shit onto the rest of us. And I don't just mean like religion like Christianity or Muslim or whatever. Even like your political affiliation or feminism, whatever creed that you stick to so hard that if anyone else tries to tell you anything different or challenge your view, you demonize them and vilify them and try to censor them. That is a cult, that is a religion. And then you're trying to take away everybody else's artistic freedom in the name of protecting. Who are you protecting? Exactly, what are you protecting? Because girls and women are a huge part of the audience for these kinds of works. You're making it seem as though it's just men. But a lot of these people who play these games or ingest this kind of media, they're women like me. But somehow we always get ignored. We don't matter. Like, it's just crazy. It's really crazy. And then the thing is, the more you try to ban and sanitize these things, the more people are going to fight you on it. Like, and then let's say they were successful. Now you've created a repressed society that's going to push back in the only way they know how. And then it will start to trickle over onto real life. Because the more religious and tight around the throat that these things are, seems to correlate with how demonic society becomes. Why do you think, and I'm just saying, just an example, why do you think a lot of those priests and people who are considered celibate religiously end up doing shit that they ordinarily, you know what I'm saying? Like, there is usually a correlation with this. It's almost like a stereotype at this point. Same thing with pastors. It's like, okay, you are addicted to this and have this problem, and normal everyday people, not saying they don't have those problems too, but it's almost like these people in power, these people in these specific niche groups of society seem to gravitate toward those things. Almost as if, I don't know, the fierce repression augments the need to do these things. You know, like how people will talk about how, men, it's good for them to have male role models to teach them how to temper their anger and stuff. And it's like telling them, hey, just don't be toxic, men. Just don't show your masculinity at all because it's toxic. End up having these people who are, what's the word that I would use? Very emotionally damaging to themselves and other people because they never learned how to deal with it. Same thing with these ultra radical feminists. They just hate everybody and want to go against everybody that has a schlong because they never learned how to deal with things outside of themselves. So it doesn't actually fix the problem, does it? Putting your head in the sand, that's what these religious groups are trying to do too. They're like, oh, Satan, get behind us. We're just gonna hide everything you do, Satan. Like, that's gonna stop everything. What you essentially do is instead of using it as a teaching moment to use these platforms, that's what my mom used to do when I was a Christian. She used to let me sit down when she liked horror movies, but she used to let me sit down and watch these things and watch a whole bunch of weird shows and movies and then teach me throughout and say, hey, do you see the consequences of this person's actions when they try to rob a bank and it seemed all good right now, but do you see the people who got hurt as a result? She used that as a teaching moment. And she's a staunch Christian. I'm no longer a Christian, but she's a staunch Christian, and she used those as teaching moments. So even though I'm not religious anymore, I still held on to those very things. As a matter of fact, my mother is the reason why my cars never go below the half mark when it comes to the gas. Because of all the horror movies of people running out of gas, and my mom instilling that in me, hey, do not wait for your car to go all the way to quarter tank, because what if something happens and you need to evacuate or someone is chasing you, you don't have enough gas. Never let it get below half a tank. And I still hold to that right now. Always keep your deep freezer stocked, full to the brim. Don't wait till you run out of food. Always keep it stocked, because there were several times in our lives when things happened and we were like, oh crap, other people are fighting at Walmart or wherever to try and get specific goods, and we were okay because we had stocked up. That's one of the things you could say, you can use that as a teaching moment to reflect your real life or your real world issues. But then telling people, just put your head in the sand and just erase those things. Oh, some few people, they use this weapon to hurt people. Ban those weapons, even though 90% of the people or 99% of the people that have them don't use them for that purpose. Ban them. Why aren't they banning knives in the UK? Just wondering. But anyway, I think these groups are full of shit. And I'm not saying, look, at the root of it, the concern isn't entirely wrong. Like, horrible things do happen to women and children in the real world and the trafficking and stuff like that. And yeah, you could think of it as nice. All cults, whenever you see them from the front page of their proverbial books, they all seem as though they're just trying to help people and be nice. And they're like, I'm just doing this because I'm trying to protect everyone. That's how it always starts, but that's not really what it's about, is it? And you know it, because they're going after fictional works instead of actually going after real world issues. Fighting on Twitter and trying to ban video games and fictional works is not helping. How about you actually comb through your family to find out who the freaking pedos are and get that situated? Your own brothers and sisters, your own fathers, some of these people, maybe their boyfriends or the stepfathers to their kids, they need to pay a little bit closer attention to who's around them and who's targeting, because you would be surprised. You're so freaking focused on things that the devil has his fingers in that you don't even realize that your brother or your relatives or your own friends are targeting your children. It's not the games, I promise you. Because you know what? The people that are out there hurting children, they're not on the video games, they're out there in the freaking parking lots. That's where they are. And half of these people also, they make it seem as though, oh, it's all of everybody else's fault, instead of accepting that they're part of the problem. Maybe you didn't do your due diligence in prepping your kids enough to look out for certain things, or learning how to come to you and feeling bold enough to come to you and tell you about these things, or what to avoid, or signs to look out for, and not to trust everyone. Half of these parents that are out here doing this have done a disservice to their children, and they think that this is where they need to be going with it. And they put it under these names so that people have no choice but to agree with them, without realizing at the root of it, they don't actually freaking care. None of these people care. Because these same people, if they're religious, you come to their side and you say, we need saving, we need your help. And they're like, yes, my child, we will help you. Become one with us. We're doing this for doing the Lord's work. We're doing this for feminism and whatever the case is. Let you have a different opinion from them. Let you dare to question or challenge them. And you will see how fast people like this turn on you. You will see how fast. You can already see it in how they respond to people on Twitter. You cannot tell them anything. So yeah, I don't think we should give people like this an inch. Obviously, if things are against terms of service, like you're taking real life photos of people and then doing things, you know what I'm saying, within reason, common sense. But if it's a fictional work, as long as it's consenting, or if it is an actual story, tasteful story being told, and you're not exploiting any actual real person, it shouldn't be an issue. We should have artistic expression. Because sometimes that's the only way you're gonna get these stories out there for people to understand what's actually going on. You see what Cuties did? That was wrong. Why was it wrong? Because they used actual children to depict those things in that movie. If they had used people that were adults, that looked maybe like them, that could pass as them, but they were actual adults, consenting adults in those roles, that would have been a completely different story. But they used actual children all up in their ass and shit when they're twerking. Like, that is so disgusting. And the fact that it's a woman director that did it is even worse. The parents who allowed their children to get filmed like that, they're disgusting. And you have those same people that would have the nerve to be like, yes, we must do more. We must do more and target these games, when you're putting your literal children into the jaws of these people and spreading it out there under the guise of you trying to spread a message to protect children while at the same time actively putting children in harm's way. You can't make this shit up. But yeah, guys, what do you think? What do you think? I feel very wary about groups like this because I've grown up in that whole cult mentality thing and I can recognize it from a mile away. And it won't just stop at video games. I promise you that. They will come, all the girls are like, yes, yes! Those men are dirty and disgusting. All of y'all who you consume the erotica and dark romance and you like all your anime with your husbands or whatever, you're next. All those people on Wattpad and Webtoons and all those stories that you've been telling, you're next. You think you're safe from this? Girls, a lot of us are writers of those kinds of things. Even if it has nothing to do with that, and it's just sci-fi or horror, it doesn't matter. Gory stuff, dark themes, you're next. Even if you survived those very things that they're talking about, and you use writing as a way to cope, oh, it doesn't matter. If they deem it that it's too taboo, oh, you can't do it. There's no way for you to express it or share it with people to help other people. Nope, you're next. Everything that falls under this, no matter how tame it is, these people are gonna come after it. I promise you, they're gonna come after it. Because look at what they said. Grassroots campaigning movement against the objectification of women. What does that even mean? That could mean anything from women just looking sexy. You can have all your body parts completely clothed, and to them, if you're too sexy and men like you or other women like you, nope, can't do that. Gotta shut that shit down. And they're talking about popular culture. So this covers everything. Everything. Remember, Game of Thrones is one of those. Detroit Becoming Human is one of those. That's what these people are about. And you know what? For people who try to censor other people, they deserve to get censored. I'm sorry. This kind of shit, I do not agree with censorship. However, if you were actively going out there and trying to take away everybody else's right, nobody's doing anything to you. I can understand if they're coming out against people because people are lying on them personally and trying to ruin their reputation. But if you're literally starting a fire and going out there and trying to burn everybody else, you deserve to get censored yourself. Or you'd at least deserve to get the backlash. More people need to know about this and fight back against people like this. There's a way to do things. Going out there and trying to burn everything to the ground under the guise of safety and you caring about society, no one's believing that. Everyone can see through that. And the very people that are against it, who think that, oh, it's just dirty men who like these specific things. No, that's what they try to make it seem like, but it's not. That's only the tip of the iceberg. That's what they're trying to make it seem like. But yeah, people are not reacting very well to this, obviously. And I think you'll find that people from every side, every walk of life, each political aisle will come together and say, that is not okay. All your fan fiction and not safe for work art, or just your safe for work art with your sexy OG characters, oh, they're gonna come for those too. And then you're gonna really create a repressed society that it will leak over into the real world. Because now there won't be any outlet for anyone creatively. And I'm not saying like the bad things, I'm talking about society as a whole. You're gonna have a bunch of heathens running around because there's no creative outlet. It's like people who are aggressive and they have no sports. They don't work out. They don't go out there and touch grass. They just stay on their computers all day like these people, and they just go literally insane. You see the result of this? That's what's going to happen to society. But maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm open to correction. Maybe I've said something that I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about. And I guess I'll be schooled here in a second. But I just figured I'd weigh in on it because as someone who writes and someone who makes stories, I already have to censor some of my work in order to put it up on certain platforms to be sold. And that's only very, very little. A very, very small amount. I can't imagine if it goes the full way, then there'll be no stories to tell. I'll just tell a story about freaking bananas and they'll still find something wrong with that because bananas will be offensive in the future.